what it looked like before. And I only had a Christmas break of 10 days to get it out and install the new one. And instead of it coming straight out, I actually made it come out and go to the right. But this is how I found it, and the maintenance guy is the one that made me take it away. So all the yearly inspections that they had in there, both by fire and building department, did they ever say there's a problem with the fire escape? Now, because of welding on a fire escape, this happened this year.
Revealed Wednesday
60-mile-an-hour winds that day.
Expected in 10 years, even though inspections are required every 5 years. Let's get a report of Mike Bodette digging up some new exclusive information tonight. Mike? We looked at the entire Beacon Street block where the fatal fire happened and discovered, just like 296 Beacon Street, most of the fire escapes there are overdue for inspections. It turns out the city doesn't have any mechanism in place to track building owners violating the rules and hold them accountable. Mayor Walsh is not happy.
Are you concerned that inspection wasn't done since 2004?
Of course I am, and it's something that, constantly every day seems like something.
But Hank Philip B. Ryan did something in 2003, what you talking about?
A lot of the procedures that.
Boston Mayor Marty Walsh talking about 296 Beacon Street, the place where welders may have been working on the fire escape when they sparked the inferno at 298 Beacon Street.
On a shed
fire that killed
outside the building.
Lieutenant Ed Walsh and firefighter Michael Kennedy. Records reveal that fire escape had not been inspected since 2004, even though state building code requires inspections every 5 years. So the fire escape should have been inspected in 2009 and then again this year, which raises a troubling question according to fire code expert Amy Cronin, president of Strategic Code Solutions.
We have to question if it had been done in 2009, perhaps there may have been some damage there. Like if you think about rust, if you catch it early enough before there's massive damage and there needs to be reconstruction, maybe the welding would have never been done.
2 of our heroes lost their life in that fire, and I'm not sure if that was the cause, but regardless whether that was the cause or not, we still should have inspected that property.
It turns out many inspections are not being done. Fox Undercover looked at fire escape inspection records for the entire Beacon Street block where the deadly fire happened. 2/3 of those fire escapes are overdue to be inspected. 1/3 of the fire escapes on the block haven't been inspected in 10 or more years. It's the responsibility of property owners to get the inspections done. But there's no evidence of the city cracking down on owners breaking the rules.
Shouldn't the city know if an inspection hasn't been done in all those years?
Absolutely, it should, and there should be a report generated that's able to find out what properties haven't been inspected. So if that's one of the properties that haven't been inspected on Beacon Street, can you just imagine the other properties in the city of Boston? That concerns me.
Back to 296 Beacon Street, where the welders who sparked the fire were working. We told you the last inspection on the fire escape was done in 2004. As we reported Wednesday, that inspection was done by Giuseppe Falcone, who owned D&J Ironworks in Malden. Falcone is being sued by the owner of the building that burned down, but he denies having anything to do with the welding that day. No comment from the owner of 296 Beacon Street, which did not have the fire escape inspected for a decade. I'm Mike Bodette for Fox Undercover.
Got it? So guys, welding is done every day. It's the difference between a $3,000 fix and a $3,000 refurb. So that's your first problem. So welding is done every day. What you have to do is when you write the violation, you have to make sure that during the violation process and while you're getting the fire escape repaired, that welding is not the first course, because once you get the violation or the evaluation back from a structural engineer or others acceptable to the building official, it is then that a plan of action is going to be made between the owner, you, and the vendor as to whether or not the fire escape is going to be spot repaired with bolts and then load tested, or if the fire escape is going to be fully refurbished in lieu of a load test. So way before anything ever gets done on a fire escape, you can eliminate the need for the fire escape to be welded, because nobody ever pulls a permit anyway. They never pull a permit on that. And that fire, there was 2 buildings. The guys were working on this fire escape welding. This building caught on fire because the shed, a shed right away, probably 5 to 8 feet away from the building, a spark. It was 40 to 60 mile an hour winds that day. blowing from the river towards this. So what happened was the welding on this fire escape caught this shed on fire. This shed on fire, these guys took off. This is all again what was said. The shed on fire, like you saw a little bit of the film there, the shed on fire was so intense because the wind it blew through the first floor in the basement. That's what caught that building on fire. So the shed caught that building on fire. Firemen were inside, and as soon as the firemen in the front of the building started knocking out windows, what happened? With wind in the back, going through the basement and through the first floor, out to the front, that blew the whole building up in the fastest time. I think it was 5 to 10 minutes it was all said and done. And that's what trapped the firemen in the basement, because basically as soon as they blew out the front windows, this is again, just general information that I heard, that's when they got trapped in the basement, on the basement floor. So the building didn't catch on fire, the shed, the wind was all a freak accident that occurred very quickly. Got it? All right, so now let's take a look at a couple other things, and we're gonna start talking about sort of wrapping it up, because again, we only have so much time, and I don't know how much time you want to continue, but we can open up for questions. But here's a couple other silly ones. Rutgers University. This is called a fireman's fire escape on a building. And I believe it's not a frat house, but it's close enough. What do you think about this one? Huh? This actually should be a fire escape only for fire academy trainees. Right? So this is in Rutgers University, still being used today. Here's another wacky one in Elizabeth, New Jersey. Anybody ever hear of a slide fire escape? Slide fire escape, this is a 12-story slide fire escape. It starts over there, slides all the way down, and you go this is the roof access. Every floor has these two little red doors. You open them up, and this is what you see. You get no potato sacks. You go in head first or tail first, it doesn't matter. It's dark like crazy. And at the very end, when you're scrolling around all the way, corkscrewing all the way down, tumbling or whatever, it's basically a human sausage in case anybody's too big to go down the stupid thing. It's a human sausage. And basically at the very end, there's this huge panel on this iron door. So that you're supposed to come down with your feet. So there's a plan here that you're supposed to slide down with your feet. You're supposed to whack this huge paddle with your feet, and this iron door swings out open, so it's corkscrew, and then the last floor turns into a straight shot slide. So it's a fun house for firemen. So the day we got there, nothing was working, so they actually brought in some firemen, some training firemen, and they sent one guy down on a rope from the first floor down to basically kick the door open because it was rusted shut. So this is the only known. Now a lot of times they used to have slide escapes as a standard means of egress in a lot of buildings. Some of you may have recognized this on schools, factories. They had these things in a lot of places. They were in the code for the longest time before they were just basically taken out. Okay? Now, what I want to do is, I have a few more slides to show, but I'm actually going to end it here and see what's if anybody has any questions, and then John, I'll ask you whether or not you want to, take it from here. Because I have a few more slides to show, but I want to end on this. This is the first video that you saw when they got there, and this was a complex with 50 apartments. You remember this, right? And you remember that the firemen got there, and again, this wasn't a firefight, this was a rescue mission right from the get-go. And if you remember correctly, there was like a little 8-year-old girl. And that could be anybody's 8-year-old little girl. And usually the mommy sends them down first, right? Or the mommy tries to get ahead of them and say, come on down. But imagine going down a ladder and then it doesn't work. And not just on this fire escape. Every fire escape in this complex didn't work. So when I tell you, I look at fire escapes all over the country, and 75% of them fail. Just so I don't say the word 100, but every fire escape, on average, because they are 50 to 75 years old, have not been inspected in 25 to 50 years. How many vehicles do you expect to start up in a barn when you have a find? You find a 47 Chevy in a barn. Will it turn over and start? Right? So that when I say that my numbers are high, it's because it's the bastard child of egress. But I want you to understand, this is what your firemen are facing, and only fire prevention can prevent this, and that is, firemen need to do their job when they get there. They need to see a tag. They need to have confidence that the fire escape is safe, not only for the tenants, but for the people who are going there to fight the fire, and they don't want this to occur.
Right now, firefighters are taking down the ladders and rolling up the hoses But earlier in the night, when they pulled up, there were flames coming out of the side of the building. Firefighters say it was one of the scarier moments, because when you pull up to a building and you see children and mothers hanging off the side of the fire escape, smoke swirling around them, isn't that scary, scary stuff? They got up there, they got the ladders up, and they said nobody got hurt. The fire escape, there was 3 or 4 people hanging off the fire escape. They couldn't get off. They were just on the fire escapes. I had people hanging in the fire escapes at the rear of the building, and on this side of the building, we had a bunch of people in that fire escape. About 50 people were displaced inside this building. Our firefighters say there's good news tonight. It looks like everybody will be allowed to go back in, except the one unit where the fire was in. They said, that's good luck to them tonight. I'm Bob Wilson, on the scene of Bridgeport, News 8.
All right, so with that, I'm gonna open it up to questions, and because I know it's, you know, I don't know, it's time for you guys to get going, but let's open it up for questions, and I just want to remember one thing. None of this has to change today when you go back to work if you apply the checklist method. That's all you have to do. Don't go looking for fire escapes, because as you will now see more fire escapes than you've ever seen in your cities, because now you're not going to be looking down anymore. You're going to start looking up, and you're going to identify fire escapes that are all in the back. So all your 1, 2, and 3 families that used to be single homes are now 2 or 3 apartments. They have a fire escape in the back that you didn't even know existed. All the alleyways, when you walk down your alleyways now, you will see fire escapes in the back tucked in somewhere, resting onto a roof, and that's it, because they don't completely come down to the ground. That's why you haven't seen them. So if you have 2 and 3 family homes, you have 2 and 3 family businesses and mansions and any institutions such as colleges, you have fire escapes. But like homeless, you've never looked for them. So fire escapes are the vast and child of egress. You start making this a checklist item. We'll start out with you first. Fire prevention, smoke detector sign off, ask for a copy. Then we'll bring in the building department guys and start incorporating permits. Then we'll bring in housing, so that any Section 8 housing must have a complete fire escape affidavit. Health department, they're gonna get involved too. So make it a checklist item, and fire escapes will find you, and this is gonna take 3 to 5 years to get going on this before it becomes a routine thing. Yes.
Would you say that starts with city ordinances a lot of times? Because a lot of these, we have a lot of frat houses, fraternity houses and sorority houses and stuff like that, and those are technically single-family dwellings. And you get into whether they're, you know, R2 and R3, all those different things required. Should it be basically a city standpoint to begin with, so that we can only enforce what the code official?
Yeah, I have one answer. If you start from the top down, they'll shoot you in the head.
Yeah.
If you start from the bottom up and don't give anybody warning, just you add this to a checklist, and then after it's gotten some root and it starts, then you do want the ordinance. The ordinance is only because the code, the IFC hasn't been adopted for whatever reason. So in not waiting for the code to come, you actually jump started with an ordinance in your area. Okay. Any other questions? I'll be here, and this again is a 4 to 6 hour course. I'll send you a copy. If you gave me your card, I'll send you the 4 to 6 hour version of this, and I'll have this quickie, what we call the 90-minute seminar. We'll have it ready for you guys anytime.
This is Scott behalf of Arkansas Fire Prevention. Thank you for sticking around today to put this presentation on for us. There's kind of one of our challenges. But thank you for coming to Northeast Ohio.
But in my state, and you think that fire marshals Which is, the NFPA also right there.
No, he was waiting for it.
I mean, you would have to permissions to cook all the sauces and stuff.
But again, the problem is the building department runs everything in Massachusetts. Right, so in 50 states, 40 states are 5 pensions strong, and in 10 states, the building department of Massachusetts happens to be, because, you know, they don't play ball. I came home, as a matter of fact, the IBC in 2012 took maintenance out, you know what it says?
Everybody in the first year, there's only 3 people living there. There's evidence of 4 veterans. One's
You know what I mean? But, you know, you don't have the building department there, so I'm just like, oh,
Walk through,
you know, the curb, you know, I've had more success outside of my state. It's always the case. You always have more success and more appreciated outside the state. Before all of a sudden at the end, you say, when I wake up, oh, the sun's not there, the sun here, you know, it's good.
fine, but you find all the chalk when you walk in. And how much rent is owed?
Yeah.
Yeah, Boston, summer.
You're back in the dinner.
And I get that outside.
Both the Teresa and I are ready. She's like, "You doing dinner?" I'm like, "Yeah." You know, she likes doing that.
I don't know what your issue is, but unfortunately.
Yeah, huge Irish.
He starts getting a little
It's a great thing. There's a lot of Irish bars in Boston, even if you're not Irish. It's mandatory that you attend Irish bars because it's sort of, they've created the they're like the Swiss of the bars. You know what I'm saying? You can go to any bar. You can go to any bar, and if it's Irish, it's an Irish bar. And I don't care what nationality you are. Now you can go to an Ethiopian restaurant or a bar.
The head building official.
Everybody feels the Irish, man, they've included every black, white, purple, you know, every color. It's funny. Everybody loves to be a little bit of Irish. And some people want, I'm not making the game a little
Blasted, you know, which wasn't fair to him.
Yeah.
But, you start looking through life safety code.
Yeah, that was just horrific. That's the factory situation. You know, it was like a factory next door. Yeah, cold storage, yeah.
I was always in there. Didn't we approve you guys?
And there is a window that's down it, but I think it's glass block, it's inside a shower stall. You know?
That's not the. Well, you know, even prior to that, as a kid, I actually I was at the Van Dome in Class, the Van Dome fire in Boston. I was there as a little kid, and we were just sitting there watching the fire.
They have an 8 ceiling, and I'm 76 and a half inches, and I can just barely stand up.
Back in, just collapsed because of the weight of the water, whatever, crushed the truck. They lost 7 or 8 there. I found the second day being something that. That was like 30 plus years ago. But I was a little kid, not a little kid, but I was there because the fire was so huge. I left Somerville to go. So that's how much you can see. I'm that close to Boston. I could see the plume of the smoke, and I went there, and all of a sudden, you know, I'm standing there. There was a collapse.
Below 48 inches, so you get a lot
It's horrific, you know, when something that dramatic occurred. And then when this fireman died, because of welding, and I've been teaching building departments in Boston for 10 years, so about this welding shit that everybody's doing. Oh, thanks for the class. Really, come on. You're gonna have, this is gonna, this all of a sudden it has to change. So I called Fox News and I called everybody.
The only thing that's really in our corner right now is that there's, she signed her permit for
There's a new mayor,
no more than 3 people related through blood can live together, and they got 5 people in the house, so they're already in violation, so it's really,
Right.
but I'd rather have more concrete evidence.
Sure.
We don't wanna be used as.
But I keep at it. It's only been 10 years that I've been doing this
Don't
stuff.
go bullshit.
And, just keep the word out. Put it on the news, I mean, put it on the web. The web's been the greatest because you can't hide it from the web. The web, if you really want to, somebody has it on the web, and you can go get it. And that's on my my
When
phone.
you have your private residence.
Hey, dude, you can get out to Ohio like this.
You get links where you get people from different states that are certified when you get on the.
Again, it's so the vast challenge, you're looking at the only guy that's really doing anything about varsity in the article, the NFPA, is the only guy doing anything about it.
And this isn't the only house that she owns in town, and there's others.
But I've never been invited to an NFPA meeting.
So they're kind of using our inspection.
No, but I
because
just
they
wondered-
need to put, like,
Come on down, help us, no,
go in
hey,
and start
good job, but
sliding
stay with me.
throw
I
the
just
lever
wondered
at
on
her,
your
see if she
site,
kicks two
you get,
people
like,
out.
if
But next year there'll be 5 people.
Get
It's a temporary fix.
recommend putting
Right.
it together.
Well, we've done the blog, but because like anything else, at the beginning stages, it's getting the word out than it is becoming a place. If I have a website, you click on all my classes are in there, you can just click along, there's a blog that you can leave some information, but it's still not, that major push yet because you need it's the 20% that are moving the 80% right now. So right now, just by changing the boat's direction is what you really don't need a lot of advertising about that because it's the few that rotate the boat. As soon as the boat is heading in the right direction, now you need full blown, like, okay, everybody on board, listen to the way we're doing it from now on, but right now, you're trying to get the 80% to agree with you, those are screw up the process. That's why I asked me, should we have an ordinance and stop it from the ordinance? I said, no, dude. If you let them know that you're doing this, they'll stop you in a heartbeat. The last thing you want is the politicians to know there's a great idea coming from you guys. They'll torpedo it faster than you can imagine. So just start doing it. Yeah, start doing it. And then all of a sudden, by the time it's got some foothold, they can yank a couple of weeds, but as long as the root is, we're like a dandelion. Once you guys get going, you like dandelions. Yeah, you can rip it, and then you walk away, then it comes right back up. Because that root is 2 feet deep, and that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to get it 2 foot deep. And I don't care who yanks me.
679 389.
Yeah, they don't understand what you have to do to get rid of, so, in the beginning, it's
Is that
absolute, you
a
can't
direct
do
number, cell
anything.
phone?
It's,
Cell
you
phone.
you tell everybody, hey, everybody, let's get a politician parade here, and they'll look back. They'll shoot you right in the head.
Well, thanks, that's helpful. At least-
And then as soon as you get the lawsuits going, then,
No,
well, now they wanna fix it, because now it's costing them, it's all in the sense, you know.
Just got more cost, Now they
Thank you.
Let me just start throwing out all these addresses around town.
Not the way.
Hold on. I'm not here to, take you have an issue with the building department, take it with your council person, do whatever you need. I'm not the avenue in order to do that, but, obviously, what I gotta do today, he's gotta get moved. So I can follow through there down, and then.
Yeah.
For them to, basically, it was the building department secretary that put this all upon herself.
Make it a permanent step.
And so.
That's just a
I'm
life safety,
backtracking.
not like, it's a breaking issue, that's all it is.
And I asked for that when I gave her the report. I said, before you do anything, let me make sure that I dot my i's and
Yeah,
cross
well,
my
what's
t's.
over?
We have the chief, your building official, your law department, right, your safety director.
Well, that's where we come in and help you with that, say,
Right now.
don't go in there looking for
Knowing
trouble, say,
that you
listen,
have
I'm gonna continue my inspections
This is the
and
first
all your
one.
frat houses and everything, and at the end of everything that you
Right,
normally.
and then,
By the way, I
you know,
give you a
get
copy of
going
your
the wrong
affidavit,
direction.
right, checking your last
But,
battery and your last thing. They're like, what? Yeah, I'm almost done, this is the last thing, but I just need a copy of your affidavit for that fire escape on site. Oh, let's go look at it, I don't wanna look at it.
Right.
I just want a copy of the affidavit that you've had it maintained recently. You probably maintain that every
No,
5 years, right?
yeah, if I give you all the other half.
Okay.
You guys been catching any fires, Mike?
That's
Chief,
fine.
to state
Let me-
fire marshal's
let me go
office
finish that last,
Okay.
That's how you don't make a stink about it, you just ask for a copy, and when they say I don't have one, you say, ah,
What we
you know
talked
what,
about here
let me
today
just
is
sign
he's
this, go
got
off on this whole,
Yeah,
you're
no,
good to
no,
go,
to
kind of
see,
thing. But
you
now
know,
just,
and a lot depends
that after,
on-
I'll give you 30 days to give me that
If
affidavit.
it's
But here it is, this thing,
misclassified.
occupy, whatever,
That may be
all stuff,
something
money
as well.
change.
Right.
You could say.
But by the way, now,
for
I've got
this
one more
use,
thing.
but you're actually
Now, if you don't
using it for
comply in
this.
30 days with this thing, I may come back and kick everybody out.
Good.
But, you're gonna do the right thing, right? So give me the
So
affidavit.
we're on the same page.
Oh, we
What do you
could,
classify?
that's all it is.
So now here I am
Don't change
classifying it
anything,
when it's not
don't
even
look for
classified.
them, but have them find you now,
That's,
in day-to-day checklist items.
wow, it's probably something.
So it's the virus, I just need you to sneeze on something.
Decades ago. Because
What's
you're a
that?
college town,
Right.
knowing that that's what's
So it'll
gonna
be
play
calling
out.
you later, so
Right.
otherwise,
No,
you come in with this whole,
And
We're gonna, there's anything we're doing, we're gonna have a task force, you're gonna get shut down.
Use the example of the mansion where you go in and now it's like she's getting a letter and I just get out.
You know, because there are too many people in the house, and I can imagine the landlord's like, well, who called the fire department? She's never called the fire department again.
Well, and then I was gonna really, would she reply?
Yes.
10 minutes earlier, and she was afraid to call because she didn't want to give themselves away.
Right.
Yeah, I know, it's a double-edged sword.
Went to this house, it's just a large, 2.5, 3-story, home in a school area.
Use the restroom. That's
And
all
they go up
These
there
ones
and
down here
check
are
the
locked.
odor. It ends up being.
No, they left.
Yeah.
I got it, there's a key right here, I should have told you
But
guys.
while they were there, the neighbors that are
Restroom over here.
place,
You got
checked
Oh.
into, because they don't like party or any kids are in there. They all kind of just mysteriously start coming in around, and they come out and start shoveling, they're all interested in it, start gathering. And you get the neighbor next door, who says, they don't have a fire escape on the third floor, they don't have a ladder, a rope ladder or anything, or a rope ladder's not good. And it's like, we're getting in the middle of it, it's like, you know what, we don't normally inspect anybody's particular home, we have a right, we can get technically a warranty on any vehicle, any building in my jurisdiction, but we don't typically go to any single-family dwellings and we want to see this, you know. Now we got this problem is that our city, because they want to make a little money or they just permit thing, at that point, it says, that's when you need to go in and say, it's a city ordinance that we're gonna do this leasing thing. If we're gonna do this, then they should have they have one qualified credentialed building inspector, and they got a whole school of these exterior maintenance people that don't have any clout. So the one building inspector has to come in there and he has to aim, what is this occupancy? Is this a boarding house? Is it an apartment? There's different things. Is it shared bathrooms? There's more than just, we have in the state of Ohio apartment code, it says if a basement is lower than 88 inches, it doesn't even need a secondary means of egress. There's a sleeping area basement, right? So what you're saying is it's okay to sleep in a crawl space, but if it's a regular standard 8-foot-high basement, now they go into more detail about what you need, a 9-foot egress well out. If it's below 48, you need a ladder, and they go through all that kind of stuff. They don't get into the detail about the escape from the third floor.
Right.
So, I mean.
Well, and I'll help you with that. If I have a single-family home, I have a front door and a rear door, and it's my house, and my kids live on the second floor and the third floor, which I used to use as an attic. Unless the zoning in the area says that attic space, if it's rezoned to you for different use, then I'm forced into an egress issue. But otherwise, I have a front door, back door, I can have 3 floors, 4 floors, and I don't need a second means of egress, because that's just the national laws about single-family issues.
Right.
As soon as I turn that into a different occupancy now, unrelated people now rent my second floor, even though it's part of the same house, same common kitchen, same common bathroom. And now, like you said, now it's an ordinance that says, well, this is not really a family dwelling situation, this is a multiple grouping of people. Now I need a second means of egress out of the second. Are you guys using the third floor attic? Yes, we are. I need a third means of egress out of the third floor. Because you guys are not treating this as a single family, you're treating this as a multiple family under a single, under the, sheep with wolf's clothing, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's, or vice versa. But it's basically, your use of it has changed so that you're actually almost, using it as a boarding house, but you're under that technical rule of the 3, but you know what? No, we're gonna classify this as not a family dwelling, this is a group home dwelling.
And you think
And
because
because of that, I need a
fire
second floor, and I
escape
need a
ladders,
third floor access. Or I need you to augment, and in some augmentations, you could be, you don't have to build a fire escape, you know what? Sprinkle it up, or, do something different that lets you use it in this grouping.
Their answer to the solution is the one house, they bought a fire ladder, so here you go.
Right, and you can't, that's a third means of egress, that's not a second means of egress. A fire ladder that you hang on the windows,
Right.
sills, that's a draw ladder, that's
They
third
address
means.
means of egress versus means of escape.
Right.
It's 2 different categories. They go into a lot of detail about the size of the window, 9 square feet, or how high the sill is that you can get out. They don't address what you do from the window there. It's part of that egress, the fire department putting the ladder to that window. Is that a way out?
Right.
It doesn't have to, you mentioned it has to continue down
To the grade.
To grade, and it doesn't seem to address that.
Well, this gray area is 100 years old.
Yeah.
So you have to use your best common knowledge, and you just have to use the information that you have readily available to you, that we provide to you to say, listen, here's what everybody in the nation does when it comes to single-family homes that are 2 or 3 stories tall. is what everybody does when it's a single-family home, 2 to 3 feet tall, but they use it in a group setting now, because you just go to the state. Will the state allow a battered women's shelter to use a 3-family home? No, they always augment the means of egress. When it's state money going in there, you know, that same single-family home that now is a group home, they need a second means of egress out of the second, they need a second means of egress out of the third. Why wouldn't that apply that to the general public? Now, you take the same 3-story house and you make 3 apartments, now you need a fire escape out of that, no matter what.